It's Friday, Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. Ha! That was kind of like the Flash musical episode. Did you guys see that? It was awesome. That was a lot of fun. And now I have that song from Guys and Dolls that Martin Stein and Joe West sang. Well, the actors that played them in the thing. Anyway, for the people who haven't seen it, I will move on. Lots to cover, as usual. There were about 500 comments this week as a conservative estimate. The Mass Effect video alone got a ton, as you could imagine. But I'm going to start with the Momo Monday video. Glad you guys enjoyed it. Wasn't sure how the different pace was going to go. Some people didn't like it. So it's like, all right, it worked, but not for everybody. So I guess I'll mix it up. Some will be more traditional. Others will be more like that. Some weeks I can't chase my cats around with a camera waiting for them to do something cute, right? Right, so I have to do it this way. But somebody made a comment about couch co-op and social skills and the fact that online multiplayer just isn't the same thing as sitting on the couch with your buddies old school the way we used to. My God, back in the day we had to take turns. And you know, if you had somebody who was on a big rally and like blew through 4 levels of Mario without dying, then it was really annoying because you're just sitting there. But it taught you patience and cooperation and sharing and all that stuff. And those are important skills. And I really believe gaming can teach skills. Actually, science has shown that gaming's actually quite good for cognitive retention and development on multiple fronts. Somebody else asked about my yellow glasses. They are not a particular brand, and I am not going to say the particular brand because the particular brand, I've contacted them. They won't sponsor me, so I'm not going to say their name. But it's the same idea. They don't do the wraparound, but they do filter out the blue spectrum light that can cause a lot of the eye strain. For years, they were great. The last few weeks, I have been having trouble with my eyes again. And I think it's partially allergies. I think it's partially just working too much and being chained in front of screens constantly. So if you do have eye strain, like burning or twitching in your eye or something like that, they do help. And they've come out with lenses since that are less obviously yellow. So you can get assumedly the same effect without the obvious appearance. So if this is an issue, if it's something you're concerned about, they do actually make a fair bit of difference. Glad to see the Delilah fans were happy that Delilah ended up on camera. Delilah is very grumpy, so I don't like to push it. And, you know, despite the growling that Binky does, I don't torture my cat. He does that saying hello. You listen closely and he's growling and he's purring underneath the growling. That's just Binky. He's always been that way. But yeah, Zelda doesn't like it so much. And Lagarto is just letting me pick him up like in the last few months. So yeah, and glad to see Zelda has some new fans. Zelda, my little action hero. That cat can jump like chest height. It's something else. She saw Binky jump once and it was like, I want to do that. That's my life goal. And ever since it's been spring, and she loves her tinfoil balls. She likes paper bags too. She likes me crunching up paper bags. So like anything that crinkles and she can pounce, Zelda's on it. And then somebody mentioned my reference to the Day of the Triffids board game. So I thought I'd give you guys more details of what that was. I've been playing a lot of, the Game of Life with my family, the one with the little cars. So the way the Day of the Triffids board game worked is you played a Triffid. I actually made little Triffid markers, like avatar things, men, as we called them back in the day before things became politically correct, by drawing a bunch of, there were like 4 different Triffids. And then, I don't know if you guys know this trick of you take 2 pieces of cardboard in the same shape, cut a slit into one of them, and slide one on top of the other so it stands up on its own. And then I glued the picture of the Triffid around it. And then I realized that was a dumb way to do it. And I just put the picture of the Triffid on it before I cut it. But then there were two die. One for the humans, which were the little pegs like the Game of Life cars. That's what I used them from. And then there was the Triffids. And so you rolled one dice to move the humans and to add the humans. And then you rolled another dice. And that was, is it die or dice that's singular? I think dice is singular. But you rolled that and that moved the Triffids. And the object of the game was to eat as many people as you could before they reached the safe house, like the safe community at the end of the book. This was me in the 4th grade. Like, I actually did this in school. And, you know, the nice thing about being in the gifted program, there was a lot of not nice things about being in the gifted program, but the nice thing about being in the gifted program was we were all cracked. So as long as we weren't murdering people, they were okay. I think about some of the stuff we did in those classes. Us weird little deviant ghetto brainer kids. And nowadays we would have been hauled into the school psychologist. Like, we probably would have been put on a cocktail of pills. Like, it's crazy to think about now. It's hilarious. You know, kids doing projects about atom bombs and, like, just, it was awesome in retrospect. I mean, what a little incubator of weird. But I think part of it was that we were very isolated. I mean, we were sort of like this school within a school. We were a couple of classes in a regular school, and the other kids wouldn't talk to us because they were pretty much told not to. And it was one of this anti-bullying things gone wrong where they were afraid we were going to get picked on. And so they basically scared the kids away from talking to us. And it was this strange, isolated thing. But it was, you know, that was the era that there was this kid. He was not the most socially well-adjusted kid, but he had crystal castles. He was the only one in the neighborhood with crystal castles. And I don't know what it was about that game. It was something about the graphics or something about the sound. It was just like Q*bert on steroids. And I loved Q*bert too. But he had this game, and we'd go over to this guy's house. There were about 3 or 4 of us to play crystal castles. And like the idea now of, a girl going somewhere with 3 boys, relatively unsupervised. Again, this is the downfall of society territory. But all we did was play video games. Like, we weren't even on that paradigm. And I wonder now if kids, you know, these kids that are having full-blown sex at 11 and 12, I'm wondering if society's pushing them into it because they're not allowed to do anything else for fear that they're going to be having sex. Like, it's just so weird. It is a very real thing that people get pushed into the very thing you want to prevent them from doing. But I'm getting ahead of myself with that comment. Actually, I'll talk about it now. It's kind of a segue. This one commenter said, you know, something right along those lines, that they used to be somewhat offended at shows like Star Trek Voyager that put in this sexy character that seemed totally out of place. And, you know, even though they weren't blind, they recognized that 7 of 9 on Voyager was hot. They felt insulted that it was that obvious. And 7 of 9 ended up being a really good character. And I agree that the relationship between her and Janeway got quite good as the show went on. And I just outed myself as a viewer of Star Trek Voyager. Oh, well, add it to the pile of nerd. But now, after years of, you know, this so-called feminist impact on gaming, they said they're installing nude mods on their games just as an act of defiance. And this is precisely my concern about the scolding approach that has been taken. This demonizing not just the content, but the urge to consume the content and getting it wrong. It's a real problem when you try to create a cure before you've diagnosed the correct disease. And I am a big proponent of making sure you get, you diagnose the problem correctly, because I've seen too many instances of a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of money thrown at problems, but they were addressing the wrong problem. Like, they were addressing something that wasn't the problem, and so the problem got worse. And it's really important to get that right. And I don't think that the dominant paradigm of feminist analysis video games, first of all, I don't actually think it is a correct interpretation of the theories that are being applied at all, first and foremost. Secondly, I don't think it's having the intended effect. And this brings me to something I was trying to avoid, but so many people have asked me about it. It's gotten to the point where if I don't address it, I'm ducking it. And I don't want to do that. It's one thing to try to take the high road. It's another thing to avoid something that people are obviously concerned about. And I'm referring to the comments that people have left about, I guess, former BioWare developer, now Manveer Heir. And, the tweets, and I've seen them, that people interpret as racist, and then Manveer says, you can't be racist against white people. And I admit I'm a bit torn by this, because I interviewed Manveer back in the day after he did that, drop the mic GDC talk on race in games. And I don't, it's almost like I feel too close to comment on this effectively. Like, you guys know me. I don't tend to freak out over tweets. I didn't freak out over Colin Moriarty. I didn't freak out over JonTron. I didn't really freak out about PewDiePie. So it would be absolutely hypocritical for me to get terribly upset over this. But it's funny that with the Colin Moriarty thing, I thought it was just a dumb comment. It was a bad joke. People are allowed to make them. Anybody who's done comedy recognizes sometimes jokes just bomb. We've all done it. But for some odd reason, seeing those tweets about, something about murdering white people and everything like that, I can't help but feel like, did he secretly hate me when I was interviewing him? Like, did I get used? Apparently he's going off and starting his own indie studio, and I wish him well. I wish him luck. I wish him success. Sometimes developers burn out. And it's not just developers. I've seen it with authors as well, and directors, that they get worked to the point of madness, and they start doing and saying things that are very aggressive. They're not as well thought out as they would be were it not for the circumstances. And so, much like I feel like that Colin Moriarty tweet was in part a symptom of him being really not happy with his circumstances, because people's humor tends to get more bitter when they're not happy with where they're at. And I think that's why he left. I don't think the tweet caused his departure. And I think there's some of that going on as well with Manveer. I don't know. I haven't talked to him since that interview. And that's pretty much all I can say. Like, yeah, I can intellectualize it all I want. He can say what I want. He can say what he wants. Free speech is a thing. I don't have to like it, but at the same time, again, I kind of got to wonder, did he secretly hate me? And this is the consequence of doing this sort of thing. Now, this begs the question, is he right? Can you be racist against white people? And this actually is, believe it or not, an argument that they teach in some schools, that you can't be racist against white people because racism is a series of systems. And there is no systemic oppression of white people in the West. And the key element there is in the West, right? I have a friend and then my stepbrother. They both went over to various parts of Asia to teach English. And especially my friend who went to Japan, she got a real eye-opener on, being a gaijin. And you aren't treated as somebody that's local. In my opinion, just based on my own family history, that's been more of a tale of, not nice things done to each other over tribe or religion. Anyone can hate anybody. And hate is a toxin. Hate is a poison, no matter who does it to whom. And yes, there's systemic oppression in systems and all that stuff. That's well and good. But the philosopher in me is more concerned about what that hate does to the person who's hating. It's not good for you. It's not healthy. It runs you down. It's exhausting. I avoid hating people as much as I can. It is a waste. It eats at you. It makes you do things that when you come out of it, you're not proud of. It makes you make bad decisions. It's a powerful self-defense mechanism if you can understand and channel it properly. The problem is a lot of people don't. Hate is a state you want to get away from if you can. So that's what I can say about that. Hopefully that's enough for people. Moving on, somebody made a comment that space travel requires fit people, and so, there wouldn't be fat people in space, and I found that a strange comment in response to my Mass Effect video, because the comparison I used wasn't to fat people. It was, I used a picture of Simone Biles, a firefighter, and a military personnel who they were female. My point was not the body fat content. My point was muscle mass. Because it's true, you go into space, they have to exercise. They have to use resistance exercises because they atrophy. And so if someone is that skinny to begin with, they're not going to do well. People get taller in space. People stretch and all that. And so if you're looking like that, if we're supposed to believe that Cora is that thin because of all that time in space, the various gravities on the various planets might cause her a lot of pain. And the point is, in BioWare games, you have a guy like, what's his name? That guy who's doing the pull-ups in front of the gay guy. I forget his name now. But the guy I'm talking about, the jarhead. Every time I see that one character on The Expanse, Amos, I think of this guy. And so that's who, blanking. Anyway, you know who I mean, right? But he's that ripped in space. And then you have women that skinny? Come on. And this is precisely my point. That Skinny isn't healthy. Skinny isn't fit. And unfortunately, when it comes to women, the media equates the two. And so what do? We get a warped impression of what a healthy body looks like. I defy you to tell me Simone Biles is not healthy. I mean, that woman is ungodly amazing at gymnastics. Like, that's what I want my female heroines to look. Female heroines, is it redundant? But that's what I want my heroines to look like, because that looks heroic to me. That looks like a person who can kick some ass. Just carrying those weapons, those heavy rifles, power armor or no, you need muscles to move the power armor. Muscles cause bulk. So we should not be seeing heroines that are size zeros with, 23-inch waists. It isn't that it's not pretty, and it isn't that it's evil. It's that it doesn't make sense based on what they have to do in the game. Hopefully that makes sense, because I want to move on to the Krogan joke. I was really worried about putting that in. I actually read it to my husband in advance, and I said, is that over the line? Because the last time I did something, one person said it's the funniest thing I've did since I did that whole thing of look at the boobs if you get uncomfortable. And I got hammered for that boob thing for months. I got shit all over by feminist groups, by this one MRA group, but I think that was more of a personal vendetta masquerading as politics in a lot of those cases. But it was so over the top ridiculous that I just decided it was not worth it. If that kind of content is gonna get in the way of me talking to you guys and it being a pleasant experience here, I'm not going to do it. But I like infusing my stuff with humor. I like not taking things too seriously. I like talking the way people talk. And so I'm stepping back into it because I think it's important. I think it's important to not be serious all the time. I think it's important to show that I have a sense of perspective and I have a sense of humor, because otherwise it's just going to seem like lecturing you guys and be a better person. Like, being a better person doesn't involve fun. Like, that's so stupid. We're talking about video games here. We should be having fun. It's still way too easy to attack a woman for owning her sexuality and for not being ashamed of her body. And experiences like that are why I continue to do what I do and why I can't just say there's no problem. One person made a beautiful comment. It was just, I love the way they phrased it. They said that character design is a language. And they made the point that the problem with Ryder isn't about attractiveness. And I think this is true for both Scott and Sarah Ryder. The problem is that character design is a language, and these characters are not iconic. They don't stand out. And it's true, the armor isn't terribly iconic. I mean, Mass Effect, they tried to get around customizable characters with that armor, right? And this is one of these things where I think the dialogue surrounding games and inclusion in games has gotten too hung up on the playable character, because it's difficult to make a customizable character iconic, right? Fallout is an example of, they don't tend to put the Vault Dweller on the box. They put the Brotherhood of Steel on a lot of box art. And the Brotherhood of Steel is usually a tiny portion of a Fallout game, but they look so freaking cool. And I think that the BioWare RPGs should be the same way. They should focus more on the designs of the companion characters, because, the original Mass Effect, you didn't even have to put Shepard on the box. You could have Ashley and Rex and then put Liara on that box, and it probably would have sold just as well. I don't know why marketing thinks gamers need a white guy on a box to sell games. Like, this just defies anything. What do they put in beer ads? Hot women. What do they put on women's magazines? Hot women. You know, like, dudes don't move product the way game marketing seems to think. I don't understand this. There's a lot of game marketing that's, well, this worked for another company in the past, so we're going to copy it without understanding it. And this is a topic for another time because it's too deep and it drives me crazy, and I'm going to talk about it for 15 minutes, so I'll stick a pin in that for now. I want to talk about the Troy Levitt interview. I promised last week I would get to this. There was so much feedback because it was, you know, a multi-part conversation, but it was an experiment. It was, Troy made a video basically saying, you know, challenging, it was Anita Sarkeesian he challenged, but, you know, generally a feminist in general to talk to him, to answer some questions. And so I emailed him and said, look, I know I'm not Anita Sarkeesian, but I'll talk to you. And that was the idea. And so it was tough to edit because I'm not used to watching myself talk to another person. That often dialogue options tends to be the other way around. I ask the question, the other person answers. So it was a groin pull in that way. And, you know, I did talk a lot, and I wish it was more balanced, but that was the format, right? Like, I was on the hot seat. I was the one answering the questions. But we both agreed that it is worthwhile doing it again. With a slightly different format. You saw at the end, it's going to be like 5 questions and 5 questions. So it's more balanced because we ended up talking a lot more about games and game design. And so, you know, we're aiming for summer right now. That's when Troy realistically thinks he can do it again. And that gives time to sort of figure out what we talk about and all that stuff. If you're looking for another similar dialogue, I did another thing from with Rich from Review Tech USA that was a lot of fun. It's on his channel. I don't know if I'll have gotten the raw up, the unedited interview up. I intended to get it up yesterday, but yesterday was really busy. But that was a lot of fun, and I really like doing things with Rich. He's a good dude. Like, he, to me, is what a gamer is. You know, he is a guy who loves games, but he has a life. He's not an asshole. He's opinionated, but he's very helpful. After the talk, because I've been going crazy trying to figure out what new parts to buy for my PC. The video card is getting a bit behind the times, but I think I have to beef up my RAM as well. I mean, if in doubt, more RAM, right? I mean, you can't go wrong, except with power. But I've got plenty of power on my machine, so we're good with that. But he was really helpful, and he took the time to make sure he understood what my needs were. And I love that element of gaming culture, for lack of a better term. The fact that people want to help and give advice and share their love and their knowledge with other people. It really is awesome. I have a bunch of other notes. I've run out of time, so I'll just give you my question. The dialogue options background, not the intro, the background, the falling Tetris style blocks. That I put in to up the production values. I don't know if you've seen on television. TV is my frame of reference. There's dynamic backgrounds. Dynamic backgrounds are in right now. But there's a handful of people who have said that is distracting. Now, I can slow it down a little bit more, but I think it's already at 23% speed. And so I want to open it up. Does that add anything? Or should I go back to a static background again? Now, obviously, the downside of that is when advertisers and, you know, mainstream media people look at my content, to them, it seems like less production value. Some of that stuff is just, you know, pulling in the rubes, for lack of a better term. Like, you have to pass to play the game. But I don't want to ignore the comment that it's distracting. So I'm curious regarding what you guys think in this regard. That's my question for the week. Let me know. Looking forward to seeing your response. Have a great weekend. I will be back on possibly a more sedate Momo Monday. I don't know what I'm going to talk about yet. Maybe I'll expand on the whole hatred thing and what it does to you and why it's not healthy. Maybe. But let me know if you have a suggestion for Momo Monday. Let me know that too. Okay. Have a good weekend.